episode in a series of 5 little snippets of conversations, Harlina Sodhi in conversation with Sandip Das. And while the question that I'm going to ask you today is very simple, it's also very loaded. And before I ask you that question, I'm reminded of these lines by my favorite poet, Robert Frost. Given that you've been quoting so many beautiful people, I made a little bit of an effort as well. And in his poem, he says, two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So you epitomize this leader for me, the one who took the road less traveled by, and that has made a significant amount of difference to you, the industry, and I would like to believe every Indian, given that you played such a big role in the digital telephony, bringing a phone at the price everyone could afford to every Indian's hand. All this time, your journey would not have been fraught without challenges, but you have continued to believe in yourself. So my question for you, Sandip, is what does believe in yourself mean to you?
First of all, Harlina, thank you very much for saying those lovely things about me. I was in the right time and right place. This journey of Indian telephony was a journey of many people. And I was very fortunate to have led a very, very fortunate team. There is a saying where they say that when you are in trouble, you should keep your friends close to you, but your enemies closer.
Right.
So I'm at the stage of my life and my career where I keep my successes close to me, but my failures even closer. And I believe that every time I meet somebody young or I meet somebody new, or even my own children, I share my book of failures more than my book of successes, because in all my successes, it's always been because of the people that I've had. But almost all the failures, I can almost point towards my own decision making or something that I did wrong. And everything actually starts with self-belief. Mm-hmm. And I was telling you a little while earlier, the last time we talked about, I like watching Hindi films, and there was this lovely little Hindi love story film called Jab We Met.
Of course.
I don't know if you saw that.
I
did. There was this very, very sprightly sort of character called Jeet, which is Kareena Kapoor.
Yes.
And she said, मैं अपने आप की favorite हूँ.
Oh.
So translated in English, I'm my own favorite person. If you're not in love with yourself, if you don't pride your own qualities, then self-belief never starts. And I'm not saying that you need to be obsessed with yourself, which many people are, but the right balance of having great amount of self-esteem and belief in your abilities is very, very important. One of my favorite athletes in my life, and unfortunately he tragically died of AIDS because of a blood transfusion problem, was Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis player. And Arthur Ashe said that for everything in life, you have to first make sure that you work very hard and prepare well. If you prepare well, you get very confident. And if you're confident, you'll have great self-belief.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of us, I think, when we look at the way we raise our children, we measure them by the marks they get in school, by the ranks that they get, how the neighbor's daughter did or the neighbor's son did, who's earning more money in a job, who got into a multinational, who didn't. These are the kind of measures which actually destroy a great deal of self-belief, because people start looking at the wrong parameters. And I remember one of my great lessons that I learned, at the ripe age of 57, when I went back to business school, was I was told that don't waste too much time on your weaknesses. Be aware of what they are, but work on your strengths. And I think that's a wonderful thing, because it really is something that, like you said, like the phrase that you often use, a coin dropped in the box.
Yeah.
And it made a big difference to me. I was in school, and like every child, I was sort of keen to go and do some public speaking. And I remember I went up on stage, and in those days, in those elocution competitions, you have to recite something very long. And so by the third sentence, I had completely forgotten everything. And I was standing, and this whole school was in stunned silence and waiting for Sandip Das to utter the famous poem's fourth line, and it never came out.
Okay.
And I remember I had a very tough headmaster, and I don't know whether to thank him or not thank him today, but he said, I started getting down. I said, I'm sorry, I've forgotten. I started getting down the stage. The most humiliating experience of my life. And he said, no, go back and apologize to the whole school for not remembering the poem.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how drained I was.
Yeah.
And I came back home, and I was devastated, and I spoke to my father. And he said, you're not the first person who has started in public speaking. And I got after it, and I realized that, it was important to imbibe in yourself the strengths that you had, your ability to speak, your ability to recite, your ability to remember. I had a wonderful memory in those days. I'm with age, it's going down. But, and the following year, I won the elocution contest in the school.
Wonderful.
I won the inter-school elocution contest.
Wonderful.
And I realized it was only those little words in front of my father. He said, like, when you go and speak, just think that nobody is sitting there if you're afraid of crowds. Look at it as a dark place and just talk to yourself. And it was wonderful. And I remember that speech was from the tragedy of Coriolanus of Shakespeare. Okay. Anyway, so when you look at self-belief, look at people like Jobs, look at people like Zuckerberg, look at people like Gates. They dropped out of college because they were so determined and so clear about what they wanted to do, and they believed in themselves so much. Anybody would have told, I would have told them, are you crazy? You're leaving a Harvard Business School degree to go and start something in a garage? I mean, come on.
Correct.
When we talk about it so freely and we say be fearless and all, I don't know whether we have the gumption to do that ourselves. Because, I came from a middle class home, and for us, academics was the only insurance. And if you studied hard and studied well, you got a good job, you knew that you would do well in life. But then later on, as you start rising, they're saying, Henry Ford once said, whether you think you can or whether you think you cannot, you are right.
Absolutely.
So So, and I remember another thing which is spoken about often on self-belief, and it says that, we human beings are like a stained glass window. When the sun shines on us from the outside, we look bright and resplendent. But when it's dark, you don't see the inner beauty. Unless somebody puts on the light inside the house.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you see the splendor of the stained glass.
Right.
And that's what self-belief is all about. It's about lighting up that little thing in the dark glass. And that's where the journey starts, of how you think of yourself. And almost all, this is very, very important, not only for individuals, but particularly for leaders, that, the job of a leader can get very lonely. And your best friend is you. And you are left to take it on your chin all by yourself. As leaders, you spend many, many hours of loneliness.
Yes, that is true. Would you say that a leader's job is certainly lonely, and the times are certainly lonelier, but they should actively go out and seek help, a shoulder, a ear, an older, wiser person?
I have learned this from my wife. She never hesitates to take help. And I sometimes find my ego comes in the way, saying, no, I'm not going to ask for help. I've got experience. And my wife is never, ever afraid to ask anybody for help. Or not afraid. I would not say it's not being afraid, but doesn't have an ego problem asking for help.
Right.
If ever people needed help, it's this time, actually. Because a leader is a leader of hope.
Yeah.
And you go and learn from somebody else's experiences. And you need that. And I've said this before that, these are times when we are subject to a lot of shared learning. People are experiencing the same things. Why reinvent the wheel? See what others have done and move forward. But leaders are hesitant, and I think the ego comes in the way, or sometimes they just don't have the gumption to ask for help, and they don't know whom to ask for help. And therefore, I think, and sometimes help can come from the strangest quarters. And I remember one famous CEO of a multinational saying that when there was a crisis in his company, his grandmother told him that, you're a multinational, you know what to do, but remember one thing, whatever you do, see that you look after your people.
Yes.
And it stayed with him for life.
Right. And that I completely kind of believe that in the sense, watch out for people and what people will watch out for you. So very quickly, in like 30, 40 seconds, Sandip, tell us in your corporate career, especially your latter years when you were a CEO of like billion-dollar companies, you went through all of this as well. Did you reach out to anyone ever? Who did you go to?
I did, but on hindsight, I didn't do enough. I'm not ashamed to say that. I didn't do enough. On many occasions, I thought, possibly it is a sign of my weakness to ask for help. And that's when I sort of, over the period of time, I keep telling everybody that there is no problem in a leader showing his soft underbelly, because you are human, and people will say, and even if you have to ask somebody junior and saying, what do you think I should do? And I don't know if we have time, but I want to give you a little quick story, but I think we are probably running out of time. But anyway, so we'll keep it for. Okay. No, I remember we once did an exercise in an old company where we were. You might have done it as an HR practitioner. That we were all put inside a room, and we were blindfolded, and we had to untie a rope, and the entire team was in there. So the moment it was completely dark and we were supposed to untie the rope, the first voice that one could hear in the room was mine, because I was the CEO, and I jumped into my CEO role till the coach came and whispered in my ear, "Shut up." And then the next guy to jump on it was my COO, and then my CHRO. It all followed hierarchically. In all this pandemonium, there was one girl who was a trainee who was asked to help the instructor. And because she was a trainee, she was helping the instructor, and she kept on saying, no, we should do this and we should do that. And nobody was listening to her. And after 45 minutes, we couldn't unentangle the tail with the whole rope. And at the end of 45 minutes, when our blindfolds were taken out, the coach told us that the only one who didn't have blindfolds was that little girl.
Wow.
And that's where our mental blocks are.
There you go. What a story. Like I said, I completely loved it. So thank you so much, Sandip. I know these are, deep subjects. I know you're deeply passionate about many of them. You have lived experiences, you have stories and anecdotes. I look forward to doing many more such conversations with you virtually to begin with. And as things continue to get better, we do them in person. My last closing comment on this is what you started by saying, the waters are going to stay choppy for a while. The battle aren't ending soon. But yes, a belief in ourselves, a belief in good things around us will take us far. And really, सितारों से आगे जहान और भी है. अभी इश्क में इम्तिहान और भी है.
क्या बात. But Harlina, you're right. CEOs must seek help.